Welcome back to the Lift Free and Diet Hard podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Coates. Join me along with industry leaders and friends on a quest to get more people through the gym door and eating and living healthier. Join me where evidence meets empathy while rejecting fitness industry fads and extremism. Let's begin.
Chris Powell, finally making this happen. Man, we talked about this a long time since we both spoke at, Coaching Con last year. Got to hang out a whole bunch. And so for anybody who's not super familiar with you, you're interested because you're actually much more mainstream than a lot of our industry, which is sort of a unique thing. I really respect people in our space who have Bachelor of Exercise Science, certified strength and conditioning coach like you are. You are an IFBB pro, which I didn't even know until I was researching. You're a 2 times New York Times bestseller, but you may be more visible to people because you were the host of the ABC series, Extreme Weight Loss, or it was previously known as Extreme Makeover Weight Loss Edition.
Yes.
You frequently appear on Good Morning America and other mainstream media, and I love that stuff. It's great to have you on.
Oh, dude, thank you. But you've done your research. That's for sure, brother. Well done.
There's way more. I mean, I could have spent 20 minutes listing off the appearances you made on various things. But like I said, our industry sometimes tends to be this little bubble and microcosm that argues over research-based what have you. Meanwhile, we get frustrated at the people who are saying outrageous shit in the mainstream with larger audiences. And so I like the people who have, that evidence-based, credible, educated background, et cetera, but who've actually cracked the code in a way and gained access to a more mainstream platform, right? That's not common.
It's an interesting balance that I learned a long time ago, which is a story unto itself, and we can go wherever you want to go here. But yes, because I understand how often the general population needs to be spoken to, but then I have to do so ever so carefully because all the people I really, really respect in the space, in the science-based space, I know they're watching closely. And so it's really important that I can connect with a larger audience on a very simple level and make not claims, but at the same time, help guide them and with the greatest of intentions, but without walking on eggshells a little bit, making sure that what I'm saying is true, or at least the research to this point, it seems to support whatever it is that I'm saying, so that I don't upset the people like my peers that I really truly respect and love. So,
well, even the way you just phrased that is proof that you're legit, right? And there are people who have spent time in that world. I think Ben Bruno's done a wonderful job, Don Saladino, and I think a big thing there is they train very mainstream famous people. And so they've had access to, I'd seen Ben on, I'm not sure if it was Good Morning America, but he's been on those kind of TV shows. And that's going to make a difference versus us arguing in an echo chamber.
This episode is brought to you by Macros First. I've always struggled with nutrition tracking apps, even the slightest hassle or friction, and it breaks my habit. That changed with Macros First. When I tried it, I told my friend, the founder, Jacob, quote, "This is, let's just call it a certain other app on steroids. It's the easiest app to use, and it has a free barcode scanner, which if you use tracking apps, you know this is a really big deal. I recommend Macros First to all my clients and friends, and even had them sponsor my 2024 conference. Here's an example feature I love, auto-calculate food portions. Let's say you've got 30 grams of protein left for the day, and you're thinking, how much chicken breast do I need to hit that? In other apps, you're left guessing serving sizes, hoping you get close to your 30-gram goal. With Macros First, just tell it the target you want to hit, and it tells you exactly how much to eat. No more macro Tetris. Other apps ask, how much do you eat? Macros First also lets you ask, how much should I eat? And while Macros First's premium version is incredible for any user, the basic version, which is nowhere near basic, is free to use. So you can go to either the Apple Store or Google Play to download.
Let's go right to the goodies. All right, so the first thing I want to dive into is, what are the biggest mistakes people make when they're trying to lose weight? It's broad, but what matters?
Yeah. In my experience, and here's the thing also, I can only speak to the folks that I've really spent the majority of my career working with. And those are the individuals that are really trying to lose a lot of weight. I specialize in those who are trying to lose 50, 100, 200, 300 pounds. And so, but at the same time, you can take those same mistakes and they kind of translate across any journey of transformation, right? And so I think mistake number one is taking on too much too soon. And we've all seen this, of course, as coaches. It's just like you got that client who comes in just fired up and ready to rock, and they're ready to portion all their meals and drink a gallon of water a day and do the 45 minutes of cardio and 2 hours in the weight gym and da da da. And you're like, whoa, 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 hold on. This again, it's the whole marathon and sprint saying, slow down and let's just take one thing at a time. Because so I think maybe I'll take a step back and say my approach is to, number one, help people learn how to believe in themselves again, because most of the individuals who are coming to me for help, they have tried and failed and tried and failed and tried and failed. And what they haven't made the correlation between is the fact that most of them are coming to me in a very dark place because yes, they've tried and failed, but what they don't realize is that every single time that they tried, they would essentially make a commitment to themselves. So just like an unspoken contract where they're like, okay, diet's going to start Monday. Here we go. I'm going to do this. Diet starts on Monday, and immediately whatever it is that they've taken on is so big, it's just not reasonable. And so by Wednesday, they're smashing a pizza in the break room, right? And they're just starving, and and they're off the rails. And then here's this downward spiral again. So it's try and fail, try and fail, try and fail. So my job is to build them back up, but I can't do it for them. Only they can do it for themselves. And so how I reverse engineer this whole process is I just have them take on one small thing and keep that promise to themselves over and over and over again until they start to believe in themselves enough so they can take on one more. Because I'm working with people that have got a long journey ahead. We've got just the weight loss chapter we're talking is probably going to be 2 years, sometimes 3 for some of them, maybe some of them 1. But that's a decent amount of time to go through a weight loss journey. So my number one thing is just to go ahead and slow it all down. Say, I appreciate the enthusiasm and and I'm here for this, but it's my job as a coach to say, no, we're not going to dive into, dialing in all of your macros and hitting all of your targets and drinking all your water and doing all the training. Hey, let's just focus on one thing. And by the way, if you want to do anything above and beyond that, that's gravy. Knock yourself out. And so that would be number one. Number two, it's just, again, every coach out there, I'm sure this is going to ring true with you. Just constantly changing programs over and over and over and just chasing. It's 21-day fix, and then it's keto, and then it's carnivore, and the thing is, and they'll jump over to one for 2 or 3 weeks, and then, oh, this isn't working. And then they jump to the next. And it's one of those things where I just have to grab any client and take a big step back and give them realistic expectations from the get-go of, laying out that this is going to be a long, drawn-out process. You're the artist here. We're going to find out what works best for you. And then that would I think that would spin into number 3. Now, granted, I haven't had much time to think about this, so I'm in the hot seat here. So I would say number 3 is diving into these these programs on rails that don't allow flexibility of lifestyle. And so, subscribing to a 90-day grind, and again, for many, it's a wonderful starting point. And some of them will continue on their journey and they won't look back, and they'll go on, they'll greatly improve their quality of life, and they'll get the bug, and it will turn into, the next 40 years. That's such a huge win. Unfortunately, the majority of people don't do that. They grind for 90 days. They'll subscribe to a specific program for those that aren't jumping around every 3 weeks. And then at the moment the 90 days are over, they're like, I just can't wait to go back to doing what I was doing before. Like, I just can't wait to smash a hamburger again. And because in those 90 days, they felt so much deprivation and restriction, they'll jump back. And then we're just right back to where we started. And of course, they're going to gain the weight back. And then here we go again. So those would be my 3.
This episode is brought to you by KNKG, my favorite gym bag brand, and now my favorite backpack for travel. I used to travel like an amateur and check suitcase. This meant hassle checking in, waiting for luggage, and stress over whether my bag would make it to my destination with me. Even my roller carry-on didn't allow for versatility once I got to my destination. And I travel more than ever, and I need quality, durability, and convenience. And when I met up with friends at fitness conferences, I noticed many travel just with a backpack. So I started researching backpacks and brands, and I kept coming back to KNKG because I've had one of their duffel bags for years, so I bought their Edge backpack, and it goes everywhere with me. And my KNKG backpacks, plural, now I have two of them, the Edge and the Conquer backpack, double as perfect travel bags for a week of travel or everyday gym use. And I can save you 15% on yours. Go to www.knkg.com/Andrew59676. That's www.knkg.com/Andrew59676, or go to the link in the show notes.
How many people that are coming to you have beliefs that are keeping them firmly in place where, I mean, you obviously talked about, getting them to believe in themselves, but how many of these people already have a firmly rooted belief in their identity that they can't? And then maybe the effort is some sort of lip service because there's the emotional discomfort of, well, I don't feel good in my body. They're experiencing metabolic health problems already, and they know they're supposed to change, but there's this discomfort about their state of being. And I believe that sometimes people look for the quick fix, the extreme thing, and it can sometimes be generating proof that they can't, which then alleviates the discomfort because, and I've said this numerous times, anybody's heard me, then you have these people in the industry who are kind of preaching this victim narrative and this enabling of, well, it's beyond your control, it's all these other circumstances, like, there's no point, and you're healthy just the way you are, when that person does not feel healthy physically or emotionally. But they've generated now proof by taking on a task, something that was way too hard, something they didn't know how to do. And then it's like, well, look, I'm not the kind of person who can do this. So their identity is still rooted. Do you think that's common?
1,000%. I think it's probably common. I mean, if I was to put a statistic on it, first of all, I can't put a statistic on it because of all my peers are listening, but I'll just say generally, I'll give you a range. Probably 90% of the individuals that I work with, they have, when a task seems hard, based on, yes, I think many of us, until we're truly mindful of ourselves, and by the way, I'm still working on this as well. I'm still trying to figure out who the freak I am and my own identity, because here's the thing, once you realize that your identity is dynamic, well, it's like, well, who do you want to be right now? And which is we can open up a whole new can of worms right now. But most of the people I come in that I step into a relationship with as a coach, and I'm taking them through the journey of transformation, they come in with a very fixed mindset, or, a very static idea of who they are. And this is, I'm a Southern girl. I hate hiking. We don't eat, this kind of food, or, people, they're constantly, they're constantly imprisoning themselves with this identity. And then, but often, and I think it's not quite the same subject, but to kind of tie something onto that, yes, they come in bound by identity. In fact, I just had a really big talk with my coaching group about this just last month. And it was really cool because it was fun to start to explore who we can be when we start to break down some of those walls and be whoever we want to be, like in the moment. And it's a really difficult thing. So I always tell them, look, it's not like you're just going to all of a sudden say, oh, I'm this person and snap your fingers, but you got to try it on for just a couple of seconds at a time. And most people, they try to get into the concept of it without even trying it on, of like, well, what if I am a Muay Thai fighter in training, even though I've only done a single class, and I'm, and I literally just hit the bag for 30 minutes, but what if I'm now a Muay Thai fighter in training? It's just like, it's interesting when you start to try that on. However, you talk about the concept of taking on tasks and almost predetermining what the outcome of that task is going to be. Because it's like, okay, fine, I'll take that on. And then I find that typically happens when ego is involved. And I'm not saying that it's a bad thing, because ego is a necessary thing for us to have and to be aware of course. But at the same time, to protect themselves from looking bad to themselves. I see you nodding. And so a lot of times it's when all of a sudden a task starts to get difficult, and in the past they've had lots of failures before, in order to save themselves from looking bad to themselves, they will intentionally fail, because the payoff in that is not the failure. The payoff is, I'm right. You're wrong. I'm right. And I told you I was going to fail because that's who I am. I told you it was too hard. I told you I couldn't do it. I told you I'm right, you're wrong. And then they'll go in their own way, protecting themselves, protecting their their spirit from really feeling the pain of that defeat. Or because from feeling not, it's not the pain of the defeat, the pain of quitting, the pain of just stepping away from the whole thing and not giving their full effort because of fear. And sometimes it's not just the fear of success of the failure, it's the fear of success as well that we can absolutely tie into it. And I see that quite often.
Well, it puts pressure on these people to live up to something that's really challenging, right? So it's probably easier not to. And I agree with, and frequently talk about, how these beliefs and narratives are protect people's egos and identities from. And I think we have to look at, okay, what is it protecting you from? What are you afraid of?
Exactly. But by the way, if you can open up that conversation without defensive barriers, then you can really, as a coach, start to make some incredible progress with that human, that beautiful human that's just trying to protect themselves from being hurt.
How do you make someone feel safe in that? Safe to explore this.
Yes. Leading by example, and I'm sure you probably remember this, back in the day, the old textbooks, it's all about drawing the line between a trainer and a trainee, and a client. And then of course, your role as the coach and what you should share and what you shouldn't share. And I know I've blurred those lines from day one. And I've found that the best way for me to, right, and I know you have too, and that's how you connect with people, is that you don't ask them to give to you first. You got to give to them. And you have to open up and be vulnerable with them and say, look, hey, let me tell you about a time when my ego was so strong and I was trying to protect myself. But this is what it cost me. And this is what it hurt, and it hurt me. And so this is what I learned in the process. And so again, just share it. I will always share first, just to let them know, hey, I'm human too. I don't have all the answers to this. I haven't mastered it, but here's where I've been on my journey, and I really want to help you. And I never expect that on meeting number one, but I like for them to understand after several interactions where my heart is, and that this is not a power trip. It's not about me being the master and then sharing with you all the secrets. No, I'm a perpetual student in this with you, with childlike curiosity for how I work. And this is what I've discovered about myself. And I'm happy to share that with you if you'd like to share it with me too. And as they start to share, they can start to heal and they can start to be aware of themselves. And again, it starts to open up this world of curiosity and discovery for themselves, as opposed to, I'm right, you're wrong. I'm the coach, you're my client type thing,
I think if we can create psychological safety for people, it's the foundation for them. So I like that. Now, I'm going to pivot back to this stuff, but I want to open up a door first because this is going to be kind of fun. Could shows like Extreme Weight Loss and obviously America's Biggest Loser is the famous one. Could those shows even exist today?
No, they couldn't. Absolutely not. For what it's worth, I do believe that the stories that we told were beautiful because it wasn't about the weight. We really wanted to get into the psychological journey behind it, the pain, but then also the hero's journey of, walking through the fire and then overcoming at the end and share that incredible success. However, we were weighing individuals on truck scales, which is, to show. But at the same time, it was absolutely acceptable that because we actually didn't have scales that were large enough. We had some individuals that were, 650 pounds. And so it was really difficult to create, to find scales like that. But then on top of that, it was like, there was also a production and there was storytelling to it. And so, but at the same time, there is absolutely no way it would work because of the level of sensitivity these days. And of course, there was the body positivity movement and everything. And so we came under a lot of heat because of it, not as much as the other show did, because we actually took a full year to take our people through our journey transfer. There was no competition. This is just people that came to us and wanted to change their lives. But nevertheless, just I think the way that the story was told, it was eye-catching, and it was gripping for people to watch, but at the same time, I think it would just be considered too offensive for some people. But the interesting thing is, I'm not kidding you, for 5 years, I don't know if there was ever a negative comment from that I ever, and that's a big deal, from anybody who watched the show. I got nothing but support and feedback from people around the world saying how they were so inspired. Because the thing is, I was not the hero of the story. I was the supporting actor, and the individuals that actually went through this journey, they were the hero. And it was all about their journey and showing humanity what we're capable of to go. Because really what you're looking at is not just someone who's steps on a scale at the beginning of the year, loses a lot of weight, steps on the scale at the end, and they're super happy. No, it's about someone who started in a really dark place, learned how to love themselves, believe in themselves, keep their promises to themselves, and overcome the one thing that they could never overcome before. So it was like they are the hero, and I was just there to support them. So that aspect of, even when it comes to storytelling, that's timeless. However, I do believe, just because of the sensitivity and the nature of what it was they were doing, there's no way it could survive today. In fact, I was told to my face by 7 different production companies, or I'd say 9 production networks, because I brought new concepts for shows to them. Even after Extreme ran its course, I brought new concepts to them, and they're like, no, we can't do transformation. Like, people want to see it, but we'll get smashed. We'll get torched for this. So I'm sorry, but now is not the time. And one network specifically said, I'm sorry, but transformation just isn't woke enough right now. And so I was like, okay, thanks guys. It's good to see you again. Because, I spent some time in this industry. It was great. Like, I was sitting with a bunch of friends, and who are running networks, and they're like, we just can't touch it right now. And even they were saying, like, with like clenched teeth, they're like, people want to see it. And by the way, we know that there are millions of people that want to lose weight. They want to change and they want to see this, but we just can't touch it. I'm sorry, we can't touch it right now.
Okay. Did you get indications from the fan base that it inspired successful changes in the audience who were watching?
Yes. And that was probably next to actually having a front row seat to the individual that had built a relationship, getting them across the finish line and celebrating with them. Like, but it was the feedback that felt so good from people, because my show was actually, because it was a one-off, every single episode was a one-off, in one person's journey. It was really easy for, Warner Brothers ended up buying the show, and they packaged it and they sold it around the world because they could sell one-off shows. And so they sold it to 148 countries. And so literally just fans from around the world who, watched it in Mongolian, or watched me speak in Spanish in Peru. Like, so it was, they dubbed it in all the multiple languages and just sold it everywhere. And it was really cool to get that feedback just from around the world of people changing their lives because they were inspired by the heroes on my show that I got to coach through the journey.
I hope you're getting residuals from that. Don't answer that question.
I'm just going to give you a hand sign right now. Let me show you.
Anybody watching the video? Yeah. So you could kind of get shit. Okay. So that
148 countries.
That prefaces the next question. All right. So what conditions and behaviors were necessary for the people to keep the weight off that they lost? Like for the show, but like for anybody.
Right. And by the way, we can absolutely go here. There is a significant number of individuals that finished the show and they gained the weight back. Or they gained a lot of weight back, and then they caught themselves, and then they found a happy place where they were able to maintain. But nevertheless, there were a handful. I mean, I would say 50% gained all the way back,
which statistically is way better than what we see floating around anyway. Like, people spout these other statistics like over 90%, and I think they pulled those out of thin air, or I think they're very overweighted by the number of people who, like, the sheer number of people who take the various different, like, extreme diet yo-yo type stuff, lose the weight, gain it back, etc., without the support. but I don't think that's evidence that it can't be done. I've heard it being used that way, and I think that's a very malicious and false sort of narrative, because I think hidden within the vast majority of those people, there's still a lot of people who have made meaningful lifestyle change, successfully kept the weight off, improved their metabolic health. So what conditions do we need to do that?
To do that, here's what I've observed, because I don't know, but here's what I've observed from the individuals who I've helped who have lost the weight and then kept it off. Number one is, I'm going to go back to my talk about keeping their promises to themselves, understanding the power of their own personal integrity, and then actually keeping their commitments reasonable, and not trying to, because what happens, it's almost like once they find like a set place where they're comfortable, the moment they start to make these overblown commitments and thinking they're going to start achieving something faster or bigger, that's when these oscillations start to happen, and they start to make drastic, they start to deprive more, restrict more, and whatever that might be. So I've actually seen better results, believe it or not, in individuals who have lost all the weight, and then they started to gain it back, and then they got really scared because they started to gain it back so fast, and then they caught themselves, and there was that awareness. Because they also had the ability to look in the future and say, if I keep doing what I'm doing, this will be my inevitable future. And some didn't do that. They didn't look ahead to the future, and they just went right back to a lot of their old habits and patterns. And then they ended up gaining all the way back. So that was big. This could be a really tough one, especially if anyone's listening who's actually on the journey of transformation. But those that actually that I've seen have long-term success, they made some sort of drastic life change where it was they changed their environment, they changed their job. The ones who have actually went on to get certified as trainers and pay it forward, those are the ones that tend to keep it off. I mean, granted, that's a massive move for a lot of people, but that's actually where I've seen some incredible. Literally 10 minutes before we jumped on here, I was on with my buddy from season 4, and he's a coach up in St. George, Utah right now. He's helping people through the journey of transformation. So it's like, here we go. And then my director of sales and operations and my executive director of my nonprofit, she's from season 5 of my show. And she lost the weight. Rachel from season 5, she lost the weight. But in the process of losing weight, she was also a closet alcoholic. She came to terms with her alcoholism, went through the 12-step program, gained the weight back when she gave up alcohol, because she gave up food and alcohol took its place. She gave up alcohol, food took its place. She gained the weight back, had this massive realization. She moved from California to Arizona, got back, and she said, you know what? I'm just going to start this one thing at a time, one promise at a time. And now she's lost all the weight again. And, she was 365 pounds when she came back out here to Arizona, and now she's 185 pounds and living her best life. She does CrossFit every single day. Absolutely loving it. So, sorry, I digressed.
No, this is great. Fire away.
Okay. Yeah. So just going back to the people who've lost weight, the ones that have actually kept it off and found some sort of passion in their movement, whether it's pickleball, soccer, coaching other people, and in CrossFit, or yoga, or Brazilian jiu-jitsu, or whatever that might be, they've found some sort of passion and movement. And we also see this in the literature as well, right? If you look at people who've lost a lot of weight and maintained it, that's why they say activity is such a massive part of maintenance. Yes, nutrition is going to be a driving force, but you have to find something that you love to do, that and that's going to keep you active every day. And sure enough, I've seen that correlation directly in the experiences that I've had with my people who have lost weight and kept it off. Massive life change. Again, changing location, changing job, changing something like that, because they were able, when you go through a big life change, your mind is super pliable to adopting new habits and behaviors. When you're in a new location, when you've got a new job, when you forces all these changes in your environment. And a lot of them also, the ones who I've seen successful, were the ones that started to remove themselves from some of their support system, quote unquote support system, that wasn't a support system. And I've seen relationships built, and I've seen relationships fall apart when one spouse or one partner was not willing to change and the other one was on a big journey of transformation. And so those who took the big leap, whether I've seen a spouse jump on board, and I've seen long-term change happen that way, which has been, that's the most beautiful thing you could ever ask for and see, is to see the two people come together and support each other in the process and then continue on. And then I've seen relationships fall apart because one wasn't willing to change, and they were almost essentially sabotaging the other because out of their own insecurities and fears. So I went all over the place.
But there's a mountain of very real stuff there. I mean, I kept thinking about how it's the same thing when it comes to addiction, right? I mean, and yes, there's a lot of debate about the nature of like food addiction versus, alcohol or drugs or what have you. But I mean, one of the most important factors is changing your environment, changing the environmental triggers, and changing the relationships, the people you're around, who's enabling, who is benefiting from these problem behaviors. Complex stuff, but this is also really powerful. If the challenge is, and you alluded to this, is not everybody has the opportunity or the means to be able to change their environment.
Right. Right. So, but then if you cannot change your environment, sometimes your long-term transformation lies on the other end of some very difficult conversations to be had with the people that are closest to you. Which by the way, that is probably one of the hardest parts of transformation, is not just the work that you're doing on yourself, but really the work that you're doing with the people around you as well, who support you or don't support you. So
I'm rereading the book Crucial Conversations. Luca posted it on his media. So Luca was at Coaching Call with us as well. You met him.
Yes,
and
of course.
It was a reminder, and it's just such a good book. So I'm like, shit, it's been a long time. I need that one back in my brain forefront. And anybody who's dealing with this stuff right now, holy shit, great book, especially if you have to have those tough conversations in a relationship.
Right. Oh, absolutely. Now I'm unfamiliar with the book, so you're gonna have to say, yeah, exactly.
All right. It's a classic. It's good. Like it's one of the coaching fundamentals. Like it's up there with motivational interviewing and a few other things like that. It's not the same thing, but they're valuable.
Send them my way. I'll share with my peeps for sure.
Promise I will. They're going to be like, what? You've never read this book? They're going to laugh at you, but it's fair. Are there, I mean, we are talking about working with populations with significant weight loss, and you've also emphasized the fact that it's not necessarily rapid, but are there risks involved with, anybody, whatever the pace, losing an extreme amount of weight? And I guess there's obviously certain overwhelming benefits as well, but what are the risks?
Well, I think we can absolutely go here because this is kind of front and center even in the media now, but muscle loss.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. Muscle loss. I mean, because the thing is, if you're losing weight that fast, you talk to anyone who has a basic understanding of physiology, but it's you can only lose fat so fast. And if you go beyond, a certain range, then the majority of that loss is going to be from muscle tissue. And so that's probably one of the biggest things that we're risking. And that's also where you kind of really have to pull the reins back on some individuals, especially now, especially today, because I would say half of my clients are actually using GLP-1 receptor agonists right now it's a semaglutide tirzepatide. And so they don't have an appetite. Yeah, and by the way, I talk to almost any coach nowadays, and they're like, yeah, man, I would say 30-40% of my clientele, they're using GLP-1s. And so it's this is a huge risk. And it was even back then. And I remember even having this conversation with my people in 2010, 2011, worried about muscle loss in the process. Just because, yes, you are going to take a hit to your metabolic rate. And I know we can also go into the statistics and say, well, a pound of muscle only burns, another 7 calories a day. Da, da, da. Yeah, but put that muscle into motion. Just like you do. We're not talking BMR. I'm talking TDEE, right? So it's like, yeah, you got an extra pound of muscle, but yeah, move that muscle. It's not like that muscle's just sitting there all day. No, put that muscle on a step mill and move that muscle. It's going to be a lot more than 7 calories, right? So it's like, yeah, we don't want to lose that muscle, that precious metabolic engine. And so that would be number one, for all the right reasons, of course, especially now that you're looking into, you see all the positive benefits of muscle for longevity. So I'm preaching to the choir here when it comes to your audience.
So for everybody listening, if this is you're finding this episode through Chris, I actually had not too long ago, a friend of mine named Dr. Crystal Guevara, and she is a physician, and we did an episode on GLP-1 agonists, and she's just brilliant with this stuff. And I'm also going to be recording an episode with Dr. Spencer Nadolsky, who is probably one of the most prominent obesity physicians we've got in the industry. So I've got some deeper episode resources. So the Spencer one will probably be released after this one, but the Crystal one is already there. If you guys are interested, message me. I will hit you up. But please go on.
I'm sure those were fascinating interviews. Oh, for you, I'll bet those were just amazing interviews.
Well, they're great. So I've had Dr. Crystal Guevara speak at my conference the last couple of years on that topic. She's just great. I mean, she's part of Renaissance periodization. She's Dr. Mike Israel's wife, although that's very secondary to the fact that it's her own credentials are world class. So great human being and a dear friend.
That's awesome. That is so cool. And so, okay, so we'll check off muscle loss as one of them. Number two, I remember we had to watch, hold on. And I'm trying to remember why it was that this was a concern. The gallbladder, a lot of times really quickly, they can develop gallbladder issues, which is kind of interesting, right? Gallbladder full of bile, emulsifies fats. But at the same time, I was, and full transparency, to be honest with you, I can't remember why exactly we always had to watch out for the gallbladder. She says they were going through the process, but fortunately we didn't have any major issues there. The other thing we always had to watch out for really was more than anything, just the psychological aspect of it, of the deprivation and restriction, because granted, you want people, they all want to lose weight fast. But of course, we also, actually, I'm going to throw in one more thing into the mix here. Elasticity of the skin. Of course, the younger people, based on genetics, based on the, and their age as well, they've only got so much elasticity of the skin. And so usually our younger people that were going through the journey, their skin would tend to come back a little bit better. And then some of the older folks that were going through it, they were just left with so much hanging skin the faster they lost. We actually were seeing that with that. Isn't there a name for it, like Ozempic face or something?
Ozempic face, yeah.
Because if you lose weight really fast, again, the skin only has so much time to come back together. And now, granted, at the same time, the skin only has so much ability to come back together, no matter how fast you lose it. Oh, well, I shouldn't say no matter how fast you lose it, when you lose it. However, supposedly, if you lose it really fast, it tends to be even baggier. Do I know this for a fact? I don't know this, but I've seen it. Observationally, I've seen it, and it's like, oh, there could be some truth to this because I'm seeing it with my own two eyes because I've helped a lot of people through this. But nevertheless, yeah. So skin elasticity, but then going back to the psychological aspect of it, a lot of times people, because there's a payoff, it's like, okay, I am going to grind and I'm just going to eat chicken and broccoli and rice. And by the way, we had quite a few individuals I've taken through the journey. They want to do that because they've seen so much rapid success doing that in the past that they switch into that mindset, and because they're going for the payoff. I can do this and I can grind because it feels so good week after week to get that number on the scale. Here's the thing. They never prepare themselves mentally for maintenance because, granted, even though we can bring those calories up, you're not getting that payoff on the scale anymore. And they don't get used to making those healthy swaps and weaving in flexible foods during the weight loss journey, so that it's really hard for them to exhibit any sort of balance or control when they cross the first finish line and they move on into the much longer race, which is maintenance. See, this is why this is another reason why so many of my people, they've gained it back, is even though I was saying, please, like, carbon flexibility, you can eat this, have a diet soda, eat XYZ. And like, that's another conversation unto itself. But yeah, like, just trying to get them to eat more within the lines of just maintaining a calorie deficit, but having a lot more variety. That's, I definitely run into that a lot.
Is there anything else that you found has really helped people be successful, especially, having lost a lot of weight and keeping it off? We've talked about environment. We've talked about relationships. I mean, I suppose, what about, I swear there was some, I don't know if it was like formal research or certainly it's been talked about, but the support of a coaching relationship, and it doesn't necessarily have to be like, quote, trainer, direct coaching relationship, but that level of support is people are more successful when they sustain their support structure versus when they leave it.
1000%. And I don't know what those numbers are, but I've heard some pretty wild statistics about people and the results that they get when they're working with a coach or some sort of accountability partner. That's the biggest thing. It's accountability. And if that looks like a coach, if it looks like somebody who you're constantly reporting to, who doesn't even know the guidance, but you're reporting to them on a regular basis and you're consistent with it, but it's the accountability key. So if someone has that tool for accountability, I don't know the statistics, but I do know that their chances of success during the weight loss journey and maintaining it is exponentially higher. And so obviously, I mean, you are a coach. I am a coach. We've seen this with our people. And I mean, how many times have you had individuals be like, I got this, Andrew. Thank you so much. 9 months later, they're like, I'm coming back, Andrew.
All too often.
Of course.
All too often, right? And we say as coaches, I mean, and I say this all the time, I want my clients to be functionally independent. I want them to have, the exercise skills, but I also want them to have psychological skills. And that's why I'll tell people like you. I've got another really great episode with a guy named Josh Hillis. Now, are you familiar with Josh?
Not familiar with Josh.
I'm gonna introduce you to Josh after the fact. I'm gonna introduce you to Crystal as well. I'll do a little bit of an intro. I like doing this sort of thing because they're gonna be valuable resources for you. You'll like them and vice versa. But I find that people who have your kind of messaging and empathy, there's certain people where empathy just bleeds through your soul, and that's very much who you are. I think that has a lot to do with why you are where you are and been successful with it. And I think just even listening to someone like you or being plugged into your media can be really helpful. I hope everybody listening, if you've got someone in your world who maybe they're struggling with the things we're talking about, I kind of hope you'll share this episode with them, introduce them to Chris, and then those people will then go and dig into Chris's media a little bit more, because that could be the sort of thing that helps. So maybe they're not ready for change, but it's a voice in their head that's kind of like, this is stuff that I've been stressed out about for a while. Maybe this is something that'll help. So I think resources and support can come in many forms. It doesn't necessarily mean a one-to-one coaching relationship. There are lots of groups and communities in the online space locally that people can find. But I think it's finding them and continuing to use them. And it keeps coming back to the addiction. I mean, one of the big things that helps in addiction recovery is social support, right?
Oh, that is one of the strongest components to support people going through the journey of rehabilitation is their social support. But you know what? Just to double down on the whole coaching thing, when it comes to accountability, the beauty of a coach versus just someone that you're holding yourself accountable to, like whether it's a buddy or a partner or something like that, is it's when you invest in that relationship, when you're financially invested, you are willing to put so much more into this process. And so it's the exchange of not just currency, but it's the exchange of energy in this process. And what you're doing, you're also investing in someone who can help you navigate some of the pitfalls along the way. Because a lot of times if you got an accountability buddy, or a partner or something like that, you can manipulate a partner real easy because you know what strings to pull to get you where, to get you what you want. But a good coach is going to tell you what you need to hear and not what you want to hear, as the saying goes. And it's true. But at the same time, when you do encounter obstacles along the way, psychological obstacles or, social obstacles or even physical obstacles, they've been there, done that. They've walked this path and they can guide you in the right direction. And hopefully you found a coach that's genuinely passionate. They're not a paycheck coach. They're passionate about helping people. And so I always suggest that people look for that in a coach. As coaches, it's either walked the journey themselves or they guided lots of people through the journey, because they're passionate about it. So anyway, it's me getting on my soapbox real quick about coaches.
I put you on the soapbox. I love it. A little bit of a pivot here. This one's a bit more introspective. In various media, you've discussed the mental health struggles and impact of negative social media comments on your well-being. Would you put the genie back in the bottle if you could?
Okay. It's really interesting. It wasn't until more recently that there were more negative comments in just as far as social media goes. So put the genie back in the bottle, meaning that I would have.
Well, would you and give up the fame and the attention from the show and the appearances on other social media? Right? And I'm going to make an assumption here. Correct me if I'm wrong, but we alluded to this earlier. But I have a feeling there's probably a lot of very ideologically extreme people who are status chasing individuals within their ideological spaces who like to choose targets that are enemies of their ideological belief system. And your show, which they'd probably never watch, and they probably don't actually understand the stories, and they probably lump your show in with The Biggest Loser, which, may be more deserving of some of the criticism that we've alluded to, and Your Collateral Damage. Is that kind of where the stuff's coming from?
Yes. Yes. I would absolutely say people who've seen the show in the past, and then now, since it seems to be much more of a sensitive subject, as far as them feeling like we were sensationalizing obese people and exploiting them, that 1,000%. That's usually where most of the hate comes from. And I wish they could speak with the individuals that I was working with, the 76 beautiful humans that I helped through the journey, who have become, well, clearly some of my closest friends. Like I said 10 minutes before I jumped on with you, I'm talking with one of my coaches from season 4. We're talking 2013. And so we've been buddies for 12 years. And then my head of operations at my company, she's from season 5. Like, these are my friends that you're talking about. You're upset about me weighing in, like, one of my best friends, this scale, in Santa Monica. It's like, okay, hold on. Why don't you have a conversation with my best friend and actually just see how that, see where that goes. But at the same time,
And to
go
my
ahead.
point is, I don't think these people actually know what went on. They're using your thing as a narrative to advance their own agenda, which I see a lot of in our industry.
1,000%. And going back to asking if I would put the genie in the bottle, absolutely not. In my own reflection and soul searching, what really drives me is wanting to be a contribution to the world. And the platform that I was given was a blessing. It was really, truly remarkable. And it was a once in a lifetime opportunity. And I took it for what it was. And I tried to make the very best I could of it. And I made a lot of mistakes along the way. And if I could go back and do the show again, I would do it totally different. There was a lot of stuff that I did that I'm kicking myself over, and I feel so guilty about, especially when even some of the methods that I used with the people is like, man, I wish I could go back and do it now with what I know. But at the time, I truly did the best I could with what I had, and my heart was in the right place. And if you ask anyone who went through the journey with me, they'll tell you the same thing. And so I would never put the genie back in the bottle, because again, it was such an incredible opportunity to have a platform to inspire millions of people around the world, to show them just the power of the human spirit and what we can overcome. And that fills my cup. Like, there's the payoff for me is I felt like I contributed to making lives better and not making them worse. And that's a win for me. That actually makes my existence on this earth meaningful to me. Next to being a dad, that's what I live for. And so I absolutely wouldn't. And I love the platform that I've been given, and I appreciate all of my followers and the networks to put me in a place where I have been, and even where I am now. And I would never give it up, but with it comes responsibility to continue to learn and admit when I'm wrong, and just continue to strive to just do the best I can and share what I know, to help improve other lives, to continue to just contribute to make people's lives better. So
The pros outweigh the cons.
1,000% the pros outweigh the cons. There's even if other people are trying to advance their agenda. I was telling my daughter this the other day when she was dealing with some kids that were given a hard time at school. And I sometimes bring up, people saying nasty things about me, but you'll never meet a bully who's doing better than you in life, right? And so think about it. You never will. And so it's just, if anything, hopefully that will help give a little bit of compassion for maybe some of the pain that they're feeling and the insecurity, whatever that might be. And at the same time, it's like, hey, man, I'm human too. I've scrolled social media. I watch some of these, individuals in this space who are advancing and doing really well. And, sometimes I'll even get that little twinge of jealousy myself. And I'm just like, man. It's like, I'd feel it too. And then I have to catch myself, because I'm thinking, well, okay, I've been that target for a lot of people as well. So you know what? I got to check myself. So,
Totally fair. Very
yeah.
human.
Yeah.
Is there anything you would caution people about who are courting this level of public attention who crave the following, status. I don't love the word, but it's a human thing. And yes, this might be a little bit industry centric, but I think there's a lot of people who'd be like, who would love to be kind of quote rich and famous. And I'll couch this by saying like, my experience has changed in the world of navigating it, going from a very, very, ordinary trainer, just basic relationship, social media, very good word of mouth, to having had social media and other media stuff that's grown. I am by no means famous, and I think that's kind of ridiculous to even suggest otherwise. But I have had a few experiences. I was in a different city at a concert. I got recognized a couple of times. People came up. They were very excited to see me. And I just stopped and engaged with those people. I was home on vacation in Newfoundland. Someone who knows me from social media came up, said hi. Amazing experience. But I also now deal with, as a ratio of Alex Hormozy talks about this, the ratio of the really crazy people, the bad faith actors that exist in the population. If you have a larger following and number of people who know who you are, then a small percentage subsection can act in weird ways. I've had some obsessed and quite scary, interactions with people who've been serial harassers, and that's a really goofy thing. A couple of them popped up again recently, and when you're dealing with people who just don't seem to understand these boundaries, it's actually quite alarming. So, is there anything that you would sort of caution people about?
For myself, now granted, you had mentioned some like serial harassers. First of all, just understand that it's going to happen. Chances are it's going to happen. The way, and I don't know if this is the best way to handle it, I have to ignore. I ignore and hope it goes away. And a lot of times it doesn't. It just kind of stays there, and they land in your feed on a regular basis and in your DMs. But if you have, my biggest concern, or what I've encountered in my experience, by the way, I've had 99.9% of my interactions have been lovely. There was only been a couple that didn't understand boundaries. And then there's been some really interesting individuals online that were obsessed with my kids. And that's when I took my kids off of social media. Because that's, if you do have a family, just be careful posting about family. I stopped posting you won't see my kids' faces on social media for the last 3 years. Sometimes you'll see a back of a head, and sometimes because they're part of my everyday life, they're around me all the time. So most of the time I'll film around them, and I just try to keep my content really focused on serving the audience and not about look at me and my family. Every once in a while it's like, oh, here's behind the scenes, but you'll rarely see my kids in there. Again, you'll see usually if they're turned around. But we've had some interesting and scary experiences with people just obsessed with the children. And that was the moment we had a scary experience about 3 years ago. I was like, that's it, done. They're off. And so be careful with that. The other thing, and again, this will go toward individuals if you are showing your kids on social media, and this isn't so much a fitness influencer thing at all, but just like if you're an influencer and you're sharing your kids, there was a couple. One of the strongest reasons why I stopped sharing my kids on social media was, yes, number one, for their safety. And then number two, sometimes I'd pull my phone out and my kids would be like, are you going to post this? If you rewind a few years, and then the moments that we would actually share together, and it dawned on me, I was like, wait a second, these moments that I'm wanting to capture for us as a memory, for them, it's not about the memory. It's about showing it to the rest of the world of, oh, look at what we're doing. So it's like, so then if I would ever plan, an event or an outing or something, I never wanted them to think that it was about social media. It was about the following, about sharing with them what we're doing. It's about, and that's why I stopped. Because if I'm going to take them to a concert, or we're going to go on a bike ride, or we're going to go on a vacation, it's about us. And if I'm pull out my phone, it's to capture memories that's only for us, and it will never be shared with anybody else. So
this makes me think of something. So this is worth opening up. You've probably seen this. I think many of the people listening have seen this. There was I'll say his name because I don't give a shit, but there's a loud and controversial public speaker named Andy Elliott. And Andy recently, this video went ultra viral, and many people stitch in this video criticizing what he did. But he brought his two girls, I think they were like preteens, up on stage, tells a little story about how they're being normal kids and he wanted them to get like ripped 6-pack abs. These are fucking preteen girls. and pulls them up on stage in front of an audience is almost entirely men and gets them to show off their abs. And you could tell the kids are a little uncomfortable. Apparently, like one guy is like tries to pull one of the girls' shirts up just even a little bit more. And then there's the whole thing about like rewarding them with a shopping trip for whatever. And he claims like this is fitness. And of course, the internet, the fitness community just ripped him apart. Now, I don't participate in, take down video-based stitch stuff. I just can't do it. Lots of people I know did it very tactfully, but I cannot imagine what, and the act of resharing it still contributes to the fact that more people are seeing these poor young girls and the relationship they're developing with their bodies and nutrition and approval and their value in society. That's some complex shit. But also the fact that these girls have gone like mega viral through no fault of their own because their fathers, and I will outright say it, lack of integrity. And he's got a dubious reputation in other fronts as well. I'm not going to get into specifics because I don't know everything, but let's just say that talk is one thing, and then there's, reality is another. Anybody wants to go do the deep dive. But that's probably the most egregious example I can think of that's adjacent to our world of, putting your kids on media. And then, of course, it just blew up.
Oh, yeah. Well, when I first saw that video, I saw it a day after it was posted. And the first thing that crossed my mind is I've spent 20 years working with those girls, fast forward 20 years. That I can't tell you how many of the individuals I worked with, the amazing humans who were struggling at 300, 400, 500 pounds, who spoke about their parents putting them on diets and forcing them into, to exercise and do this for payoffs, for whatever it was. I mean, there was, you name it, there was all kinds of payoffs. I mean, there were threats, there were payoffs, there was everything. But most of the folks I've worked with, they had not experienced just like that, but they had similar. I mean, there was just such a similar pattern. And I saw that and I just went, oh no. That was literally my reaction when I saw it. I went, oh no. Because I've heard that I've seen and heard that same story over and over and over and over and over again. And I can't speak for Andy. Don't know what he was thinking at the time. I don't know if I hope he had good intentions behind it, but at the same time, I think he really needs to talk with the child psychologist to help kind of guide some of his parenting decisions if this is the way he operates. Because man, let me tell you, just having worked, side by side with psychologists on my show who were helping people through this trauma that happened when they were 9 and 11, with the exact same kind of experience, I would just went, oh my gosh, this is a textbook shit show, is what it is. I hope I don't mind if I could say shit on there.
Swear as much as you like.
Okay. Yes.
That ship has sailed a long time ago.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Good. So yeah, that was really something. And I really hope those, but here's the unfortunate thing, and you said it, that video has gone viral. And now I can't imagine the pressure that those girls might be feeling because of the comments that I'm sure all of their peers and everyone, I'm sure they're probably within a certain bubble, but nevertheless, there's going to be all kinds of pressure on them now. And that is going to cause, I can't say it will, but it could likely cause some major psychological damage and pressure, because what happens if they end up gaining a little bit of weight and losing their six-pack now? Because those were the girls that were actually shown on video saying they got to have a six-pack, and they're, at 9 and 11, they're forced into it. So what happens if they start to gain a little weight? What kind of internal conversations and dialogues are they going to have with themselves? What kind of pressure are they going to feel? Not just from their parents, but now from all of society. Because now that they are those girls, as much as people are trying to come in and save them and help them and saying, yeah, you can't do this. It's out there. I mean, the feathers in the wind, man. What do you do?
I don't have the answer. And I'm hopeful that, I hope a lot of people see that and kind of think about, all right, well, and you've straight up alluded to this. What are the conversations we're having with, I don't have kids, so I can't speak as a parent. What are the conversations we're having with kids about their relationship with their bodies and nutrition? What are the conversations you're having with yourself and your behaviors that the kids are observing and hearing, that they are learning and taking on? And I like thinking of, I work with so many clients where, and mom, and it's not to vilify mom as a concept, but literally mom used language about her own body image, her value, as a person in her leanness, her value in being attractive to a partner. And sometimes that messaging was like said to the kids, the daughters. And that shit does tremendous damage. And I like to highlight to people, it's a starting point. These are artifacts of someone else's belief system. These don't belong to you. And it's not as simple as discarding them and saying, oh, this is not mine anymore. I have clients who work with therapy to work through these kind of things, but this shit's damaging. But if you could at least open the door to say, this is some sort of cultural belief, this is some sort of like parental belief, you don't have to hold on to it. It doesn't belong to you. And I like the word artifact because it kind of puts it in a little bit of a box that you can separate yourself from. And at least you can start there. And if you're ready to kind of move away from that belief system, but I mean, you take, an adult who's in their 40s or 50s, who's been indoctrinated in this belief system and carried it with them. It's not easy to let go of that.
Right. No, it certainly isn't. Absolutely. And of course, the majority of my clients are between 40 and 55. And and we deal with that a lot. I like your use of artifact as well, because it separates it from you. It's not part of you. And it's like, and it takes it out. And so it's something that you can name. And then, as the saying goes, if you can name it, you can tame it. And so you can see it and you can observe it outside of you. And then you can do something about it. But again, it's like, it's not as simple as like, oh, just, let it go. No, it's going to take some work. It's going to take some work because, it's been a part of the identity for so long. And so it's going to take some time to be able to just pull it out. And again, and you're going to have to practice that over and over. It's not like it just happens. You have to practice it.
Chris, you're going to be coming back in the future as a guest. This was sensational. These are exactly the kind of episodes that I want to create for everybody. So I'll say it again. If you've listened to this and you thought, wow, this is something that someone in my world would benefit from hearing, this is how you help me bring on great guests, bring back great guests, is by sharing it with more people. These episodes, my goal is to make these a resource that makes people's world better. They are free outside of the time you spend listening to them. Thank you so much. And you can give back a little bit by following and digging into my sponsors. I've got some really incredible sponsors that I'm proud of having. So please check them out. I think, especially when it comes to the nutrition side, Macros First, which there's an incredible free version of that app. I believe Jacob, the founder, and we've hung out at a few events and we've talked about how I think it's MyFitnessPal on steroids. It's got a free barcode scanner, stuff like that. So give those guys a shout. But if you found this episode helpful, please message me. I would love to hear from you. I'd love your feedback. Please go follow Chris, and you can follow Chris on Instagram at Real Chris Powell. What other resources do you want to direct people to?
Oh, well, Facebook is Real Chris Powell as well. And for anyone who's interested, if you're just wanting to take the very first step to moving every day, I do have it's my nonprofit. It's called Move 1 Million, and it's a free app that you can find on the Google Play Store or on the App Store. Just look up Move 1 Million, and it's a broadcast every day, and it's just 2.5 minutes of movement followed by 2 minutes of mindfulness. And again, 1,000% free, and we're on a mission to move 1 million people a day. And it's a beautiful way to start your day with just some very light stretching and movement. It's done to the same music every day, but it's a new broadcast every day. And so it's a really easy routine to memorize, and that's the point. And it's biomechanically sound. It takes the body through its full range of motion in 2.5 minutes. And so if anyone wants to just start off, Move 1 Million. It's totally free.
I love it. I really hope we get to hang out at a future event. It was an honor to speak, alongside of you at one. And thanks for taking the time to come on here. Everybody listening, go follow Chris, please. If you're here at the end, you hung out because you know how good this was. Thank you, guys. I appreciate you. And stay tuned. I got more coming.